So, Bradimus 1981 here. Just bear with me. This video might be a little long for considering the content, and then I might ramble a little bit or repeat myself. But got a recent request I just read from someone that watched my most recent video regarding update of my ant colonies. And basically what they asked for is just an explanation of the heat cables. And I guess best way to word it is the kind of the use of the heat cables. I'll just go over everything. I'll go over, the reason why I use them, the examples. I can't show you any examples, specific examples. I can tell you where to find them. A lot of them are on the web, obviously. I utilize the Tar Heel Ants Facebook fan page or group page a lot. The ant keeping hobby, for lack of a better term, is still in its infancy. Very opinionative. And so just be prepared to have people flat out tell you you're wrong, or this is how to do it, and this and that. That's not the attitude I have. That's not to say that people don't know what they're talking about. It's just, I've said it many times before, especially when you live in different regions and different, even as simple as different altitudes. These are insects, and I am not an expert. I'm not a zoologist. I'm not an entomologist. That's the type of scientist / doctor that studies insects in particular. I'm none of these things. But from my decent education, for basic education, and from my just curiosity and learning things, animals with an exoskeleton can be an exoskeleton, meaning that the skeleton is on the outside. Like, they don't have flesh over bones, just like an ant, or like a spider, or a crab. They tend to be a little more sensitive to things that other animals may not be. So some people are like, oh, I had this experience and this worked and you're not doing it right. It's like, well, like for me, I live in Arizona. Arizona's very dry, obviously. But don't be wrong. What's unique about Arizona, and the reason why it's one of the best states to really keep and be in the hobby of keeping ant colonies, because Arizona, if I remember correct, I know for certain that it has the most diverse plant life in any state in the United States. That's continental or Hawaii or Alaska. We have, I believe we have the most diverse biospheres. I believe biosphere is the correct word, but I may be wrong. What that means is, we have regions where it gets snow. We have regions that's desert. We really, I don't think we have any obviously I don't think we have any tropical, but we have woodland regions. We have a really diverse ecosystem, several diverse, we have, I'm trying to word this. I'm not trying to sound smart. That's not what I do, but I read a lot, so I like to articulate what I'm saying. But basically, we just have a very diverse, I'll say ecosystems. Several in my state. And so living in Arizona, someone's like, well, I keep this humid. You're putting too much humidity. It's like, well, I have to do that, perhaps. I'm not in the case of my ants, but maybe if I kept other animals, because the enclosures would dry out far more quickly because I live in Arizona. So that's just an example. I just want to get that out of the way, that for those of you trying to seek information, you may run into that. But don't be discouraged, because, like I said, this hobby is in its infancy, and we all have a lot to learn. I was actually talking to Mac about this last week, and it seems like Mac was like, oh, it doesn't seem like there's many, people studying ants. I'm like, well, I'm willing to bet there's more. There's probably more studies being done than we realize. They're just not going to share the information, because I have a feeling if it's going to be any type of group of individuals that are studying this, is probably going to be pharmaceutical, due to the venom that some of them carry, and the different type. Yeah, remember because ants. I don't know for this for a fact, but I mean they're everywhere. I think the only place they're not is in Antarctica. So it's a very good. It's my understanding. It's a very good animal species to study for a very wide variety of things, and I would think that from what I learned about venom and such and other animals that pharmaceutical companies really concentrate on, I would not be surprised there's more studies being done. They just don't publish it, which is quite understandable. So anyway, heat cables. Now, as I've said before, so I have three different types of temperature type controlling devices for my colonies. First, obviously, is my air conditioner / heater in my own apartment. Now, I live in a large studio. I say heater, but I never put that. I don't care how freezing it is. I don't put the heat on. I just bundle up. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6". So I like the cold. But I do keep my temperature at 75, whether I'm home or not. I would have liked to keep it around 80, and then when I'm not home to save money, because it's not cheap. But I don't. My apartment doesn't have a type of thermostat that would allow, like, okay, I'm an hour before I get home from work or something like that. It can lower by 5 degrees. If I'd had that, I would take advantage of it. But anyway, so I keep it at 75, and then when I'm sleeping, I actually keep it at 65, and that's one of my kind of luxuries I give myself. It's like, yeah, it sucks when I pay electricity, but I love it cold when I'm sleeping. I think a lot of you men out there, and some women, but mostly men, will understand what I'm talking about. But so with that being said, so that's one form. The other, what I have is these ceramic heat lamps. I have 3 of them. Now those end underneath. I have 3. There's one here, and it takes about there, kind of that much space. I don't have the dimensions, but I have 2 large under what's called UTHs. They're called. They mainly use them for reptiles, but they also use them for seed germination. So people that do seedlings and all that, they use these. But they're basically pads that have adhesive, and from watching previous video, the adhesive sucks. Sorry, but it just does. So be prepared for that if you end up using these. But so it goes underneath the glass. Now, some people do put the enclosures or whatever just right on top of them. That's fine. In my limited experience and understanding, just make sure they're temp control, because these actually get very, very hot, just like the heat cables. So the glass, I think, is a safer bet. That's really what it's meant to be. There are other types of heating tools that you could buy that you would put, like, there's heat tapes and stuff that you can literally put, like a lot of snake breeders. You can put their sterilite tubs and different things for the snakes, or the enclosures right on top. But these are not really one of them. But you can do it as long as you have a good temp controller. Just be wary of that. So I have and then the other one is the very small one right over here for my smaller formicarium. So now those 2 are under a temp controller, and those are down below. These are fairly inexpensive. These are actually, when you go online, I got these off Amazon, but they're actually marketed for more of the seedlings that I was referred to earlier. And no, that the lights don't flash like that. That's just when you film. It's just a type of light. So if you're looking like, why can't I find them? Why can I only find these really expensive ones meant for, specifically for reptiles? That's because just look up temperature control glass or whatever. It'll show up, and it'll probably say seedlings or whatever. But These are inkbirds. I got these because each one of those temp controllers has two outlets to control two different heating devices. Now it's an on and off one. There are other types that are more expensive that instead of just turning on and off when it hits a certain temp, they actually will increase or decrease the power. Those are better because they won't burn out your temperature control devices or heating devices as quickly as turning them on and off, because that adds more wear and tear. But they're expensive, and in this case, just not necessary. These are cheap enough. I'll just replace the thing. I would know very quickly if these are malfunctioning because I do keep an eye on my ants. I check on them frequently. I watch them frequently. And frankly, I'd be able to tell because I'm in a single studio kind of room. I'd be able to tell, like, what the hell? Like, I'd be able to tell if there was extra heat coming from this corner. But so those are the only two things other than my apartment, obviously, but that's separate. That's more for my comfort, that are temp controlled. So now, for those of you who watch my older videos, I had a Formica colony, Formica subceracea, that did very, very well at the beginning. Unfortunately, they died out, probably because I messed up their diapause, but could be multiple different reasons. It happens. But I did not use heating cables, and that's simply because that species was more. They weren't a desert species, for lack of a better term. They're more of a woodland. They didn't just require the extra heat, but I did still have them on some heat. I had used the incandescent, the ceramic bulb. I had and then the under the tank heat, and I had it set at a lower temperature, and that was more. I probably could have kept them in my apartment without it, but I don't think I would have gotten the growth that I had. I mean, if you watch my previous videos, I had really good amounts of growth. Heat in many animals promotes growth as long as it's not excessive or you allow the animals to regulate the heat. So in this case, like I was mentioning in my previous videos, when I noticed the ants were really piling in this chamber down here, I was like, well, let me move the heat cable a little bit. Let me give them a little bit. I don't think they want that much heat everywhere. So I moved it over. And as you can see, they kind of expanded out a bit. And if they do anything else, I'll reevaluate and move it again. So, yeah. God, forgive me, I lost track a little bit. So, anyway, back to my Formica. So, I had the heat for them, and they did really, really well. But I did not have the heat cables. The heat cable would have been excessive. These heat cables are not temp controlled, but because they're so thin, I'm able to kind of control the hot spots. I allow them, the idea of the placement is to allow them to, I want a lot of heat on this larva. Okay, I'm going to move it in this chamber because it's close to the heat cable. I also want humidity, so it's close to one of the water towers inside the nest area. So that's kind of the idea. Now, what Mac and most people that keep Tar Heel ants recommend is not to put the heat cable really anywhere directly around the water towers because you're going to cause a lot of excess condensation. Even for ants like my new honeypot ants over here, you can see the condensation in that one chamber. They like it. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it just makes it more difficult to see inside. And you gotta be careful because you do need to be concerned about molds and fungus and such. The ants do a very good job keeping their nest clean, except for Occidentalis, Pogomerix, but it looks filthy. But in reality, it's probably a lot cleaner than we realize. Ants do a very good job at keeping their homes clean. But yeah, so that's the idea of the heat cable because these are all desert species, and especially because I keep my apartment at 75. 75 is too low. I'm sorry, it just is for these species. These species recommend for Fahrenheit up to 90 plus, a little over 90. Some people may have better success because now here's the thing: Pogo Merrimack species can be found in areas that are not desert. So that's where the kind of the arguments come, because someone might be like, well, I only keep mine at 85 and I have great success. So you're wrong, Bradimus. You keeping it too hot. Well, this is what works. Now, believe me, I keep an eye on my ants. If I notice something like I did with this heat cable, I will adjust. And I do take people's opinions. I will listen. I don't just discard them, even if some of the things I've been told, in my opinion, are ridiculous. Nothing comes to mind. I think more towards the beginning of my ant keeping experience. But even then, I still listen to them, and I still put it in the back of my head because they could be right. But that's my ideal, the heat cable. It's more for, at least for me, because remember, I have different types of temperature control or for added heat to maintain appropriate temperatures for these guys. Mac does it differently because he has a whole entire room that he's able to temperature control for all his ants. I'd hate to work in that room, by the way. It's probably like 80 plus degrees. So he doesn't use, if I remember correctly, he doesn't use the heat cables. He doesn't have to. One could argue which is better. Obviously, I think logic would say that whatever's the most natural is going to be better. So I suppose the way Mac does it, or like one of the things he suggested to me a while back, was to have a glass tank, like a fish tank, and put the formicarium side and then control what's inside the tank. Great idea. I just didn't like the idea of observing my ants inside a tank. Then I thought about cleaning and maintenance. But, that's a pain in the butt. So I went with the heating cable. So I have all these different temp controls. Now, a lot of people will keep their ants just with the heating cables. And it's understandable because the heating cables are they're a great tool because they're fairly inexpensive, relatively speaking. They can heat multiple, like let's say you don't have a desert species. That doesn't mean you can't use a heating cable. It's just you're maybe not going to cover this much area. So let's say this is not a desert species, right? So maybe if that's the case, because the water towers are over here, I would only heat, this area. A lot of this stuff is going to be trial and error. But your ants will probably be the best indication if you're doing something wrong, even more so than other people's opinion. It's going to be trial by error. I recommend anyone, like when I first started, I told people like what my idea was. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. What do you got to think? All right, got my feedback. Okay, I'm going to do this. This is my decision. I'm going to go forward and blah, blah, blah. So that's what I recommend. As far as wattage, these heat cables are pretty standard. I know they also have heat cables these are more reptile ones, but they're really all the same. But I know that they do some with seedlings as well, just like the under the tank heaters, the UTHs. Those might be a less wattage. I wouldn't be overly concerned with that unless it was really low, but I haven't seen it there super low. I would not worry so much. If you want to play it safer, just get ones that are designed for reptiles. Obviously, if you were doing this and they were all just running away from this, obviously, logic is going to dictate, okay, my ants do not like that much heat. I need to adjust. So let me see if there's anything else. So to go back, kind of rehash things, basic fun rules that most of us that keep Tar Heel ants, Formicarium, have kind of come through. Try to avoid heat either under or above the water towers to avoid excess condensation. Make sure you give your ants the opportunity to, all right, for reptiles, it's called thermoregulating. So the reptile would move towards or away the heat source to regulate their own temperature. Maybe the ants, it's called something else, how they move the brood and move themselves, but that's basically the idea. So in this case, I didn't really do too much of that because because my previous experience when they were in the Tar Heel ants labyrinth, they really enjoyed the heat. So let's see what else. Anything else I'm thinking of? Obviously, avoid putting in their food. Let them move the food to where they want. I I believe I'm not sure how safe it is to put these heating cables inside any of the areas where the ants can actually get to. I believe Mac had a few test Erie formicarium. That's the one I'm using as an outworld over here, where the nest is inside the formicarium and elevated. I, I think he had a heat cable there. I think he said they should be fine. I mean, obviously, depending on the species, because they're gonna chew on it. I mean, my Barbados, like this poor little thing, I don't think this is gonna last forever. It'll last a while, but like these guys have actually destroyed, even though they're not real plants, they chewed up the fake the fake plants. Now even my occidentalis has been like there's still a little bit of fake plant there, but they'll chew it up. So unless you talk to someone else or get some other opinions, I would just avoid that. Don't put it inside where the ants can actually get to. So avoid the areas with water to avoid condensation. Allow the ants to kind of guide you on where they want the heat. And be careful. But these heating cables, the reason why I have this taped off in certain points in the back and then down here is because they have these little, they're not very well marked, but there's little like black marker lines, and that's the idea. Like everything below that, up until the actual where the heating cable is plugged in, is cold. That's then the heating source comes after that. So obviously be careful. This cord, like this around here, this is cold. That's why I don't care if it's touching the carpet. Obviously, I don't want a hot cord hand down hitting my cables, and because this gets hot enough, it's possible it could melt some of these cables. So just be careful with that. I would say it's relatively safe, even though how hot it gets. It's not like that hot, but just be aware. Just be careful with it. But yeah, I think I covered everything. If I didn't, feel free to, as always, leave a comment. Just be, like I said, just be respectful, and I will try to respond and do the best I can. I hope this video helps for those that you were wondering about the heating cables and the temperature and all that. The reason why I didn't give the temp out for these guys is I think I keep them at 92. I have it set, and the idea is 92 is because these lamps are not directly on top of or very close to their formicarium, and then you got to remember there's glass in between. So I kind of, even though I'm going for 90, most times the temperature controller is at 91. So, roughly averaged out, it's probably about 90. So, and then, sorry, these inkbirds, they do have, I forgot to mention that they do specifically have a day and night time. I don't know how necessary that is for ants or like even my reptiles. I didn't have a day or night. Like I said, the animals do a very good job of handling themselves as long as you give them options. But I like the fact that it had a night and daytime temps. Try to make it as natural as possible without going overboard. So, all right. I think I covered it all. Like I said, feel free to leave a comment. Be respectful. Brabus 1981. Anything else you like, just request, and I'll try my best. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.